Well, all right, family. Glad you can join me. You made it to round three, and man, we've been having a great time and discussing and working out and stuff. And yeah, I suppose you would have to look a little bit more than usual, maybe because I'm not narrating to the T exactly what we're doing. But look, what's the rush and what's the stress about anything, right? So this is a secret, sort of like a secret opportunity. So it's not like a vlog chat. And if you don't follow these videos, well, whatever. But maybe I can reveal some inside information, some inside scoop and stuff like that. So, so this is going to be a real special one here and stuff. A special one in the sense that I grew up in the 90s. I grew up in the 80s and 90s and stuff like that. But, but I came of age in the 90s and stuff like that and officially became an adult at 18 years old in the 90s and stuff. So, and early 90s and stuff like that. So you're going to hear a lot of stuff about how the 90s were amazing, and they really were, and they definitely were a version of the 60s and stuff. But, I don't know if this is the case all the time or whatever. I'm sure it is for every person from every generation. But I'm cool, I understand that, but simultaneously, I know a different 90s as well. I know a very violent 90s, and I know a very racist 90s, and I know a 90s where every drug made a comeback. So it really depends on who you're talking to and stuff. And oftentimes I control myself. I hear it a lot when I see people in the chat, in comments from certain videos and stuff. And I would never talk about us, our family here in this community. I would never talk about it in a roundabout way. That's never going to be me. I mean, if I'm going to talk about something about our community, then I'm going to make sure to do it so that I'm addressing the people and so that we know what we're talking about, and I'm going to do it in a sincere way. But I'm definitely going to not. So you take faith, trust in that, comfort in that. And that's never going to be a roundabout way so that I'm talking about somebody that maybe I was having a chat with at the chat and stuff, and saying, well, maybe they'll realize this, that. Nah, man, that's not how you go about that and stuff like that. But there's just other YouTube videos from stuff, and also from stuff from the past, or a music video or something, and you see people talking, and there's like, oh, the 90s were the most amazing time. And I understand that. They were an amazing time. I understand that. But it wasn't all just roses, man. Not at all. It was extremely racist and stuff. So, welcome to the third round. We're upping the game a little bit, and so you're seeing all these drills, and we're incorporating the knees and stuff, and there's sort of been this theme where I'm using this opportunity to just hang out with you as well while we're doing all of this workout. Would I talk this much if we were actually with me in person and stuff? Kind of, I can, and it's actually there's an interesting benefit of talking and chatting while you're running or doing your workout and stuff, because it messes with your cardio, it messes with your breathing and your breath a little bit. It makes things more difficult. So, but here I'm revealing a little bit of more info, and so yes. So I come from a very violent background, and the 90s were very violent, and I've also known the 90s to be quite racist still, and that's very unfortunate. And I do not come from a racist family at all, and that's just not. But I'm also, I don't know, like I don't want to be stereotyped on either side. But also, I don't come from a lot of money either. So we were always struggling. We made do and stuff, but we were struggling. Like I lived with my grandparents and stuff, and my dad left my mom when I was young, and he had problems and troubles and things like that. So he split over to California, the West Coast, and that left my mom, my brother, and myself. And stuff. So yeah, so we did what a lot of families did, we combined and we lived with my grandparents and stuff, and my grandparents helped take care of us while my mom, a single mom at that point then, divorced, worked, and she worked at Wall Street. And she worked in the city, but she worked at Wall Street, but the office moved to a couple of different spots. But she worked in Manhattan, and in the business district, and she worked for, so I always lived on the borderlines between what were white neighborhoods and black neighborhoods, and the things like that were very definitive back then, and I guess they could be definitive now as well. Like I was zoned before I was going to high school, when I was zoned to go to Tilden High School, which was, for white people, it was in a very bad neighborhood. So yeah, so I got out of that, and the way you get out of it is you provide a different address and stuff. So we provided my uncle's address, and so I was able to not have to go to Tilden, which is in a different part of Brooklyn, right? Am I right? This is such a long time ago, right? So anyway, like a genius idea we had, instead of going to the next local high school, which was from my area and stuff, where all of my friends were going and everyone was going, we had this big bright idea that I was going to go to Beach Channel. Now, Beach Channel is, off in the Rockaways, out in, over the that little bridge over there and stuff. And it's not the Verrazano Bridge. It's forgot the bridge now. It doesn't matter though. You take the Belt Parkway, or it's not even the Belt Parkway. You go past Kings Plaza, for those who have any idea of what I'm talking about and stuff, and you go over that bridge over there, the Marine Park Bridge. Is that what it is? Whatever the hell that thing is over there. And you make your way to the Rockaways and stuff. And yeah, the Kinks, I think it was, or this, whatever, just the Rockaway Beach or whatever. Yeah. So you buy Reese Beach, you buy Rockaway Beach. So I'm over there by Beach Channel Drive, and I'm going to that school. And man, was that an experience, because that school was tough. And that school was loaded with gang affiliations and cliques and crews, and it was loaded with minorities and people with lesser money and coming from really tough backgrounds and tough areas, and I didn't know anybody. And I went over there because it was supposed to have an oceanography program, and that was a disaster. I mean, they had a rowboat, I guess, because the school was on the water, I guess, but that whole oceanography program deal, I don't know about that, maybe once upon a time, but I don't know. But all I know is every day after school, there were fights, big, huge fights, 10, 15 plus on each side. Not that 10, 15 plus were fighting, but, 10, 15 plus on each side, massive, just supporting whoever two were going to fight. And the girl fights were as brutal as the boy fights every day. So I learned a lot, I really did. I learned a lot of how to handle myself, how to show respect, and not to be a dick, and how not to be like, I need to be able to show that I'm not a pushover or whatever, but I can't do it in such a way. And sometimes you just have to fess up and just say, if I can't come clean to this person, I'm never gonna make any headway and stuff. And say like, yeah, you guys got me. You got me, I'm outnumbered, of course, whatever. But that's how it is. And I survived, and I made a few friends, but it's no success story. There's no happy ending in that school. There was no happy ending. It was very violent, okay? I was still taken in, but by then my mentality was already like, it was already set. I was the odd man out and stuff. And I always had a problem with certain groups. I was not into putting anybody above anybody else, especially on the financial thing, and I was not into denying or not hanging out with certain groups because they were poor or because they came from the projects, so you just don't hang out with them. That's not how I ever conducted myself. It's just not how I did it. But probably also because of my upbringing and my grandfather, and who we looked up to, and he was a strong guy. He was an awesome guy, and very beautiful, awesome guy as well. And he used to work all the way, I don't know if it was in Fulton or whatever, and he used to go all the way downtown and over there, and he worked in the tough neighborhoods and stuff back then, but you learn a lot. But the cool thing was, and I mean it in a sincere way, we got the best of the worlds. We got the best times too, because I was able to live a life where I was able to hang out with all of those different people and make great friends from across the different ethnic cultures and stuff like that. And I was able to sort of get away from that racism and stuff. But I paid a price for it. I paid a dear price for it, actually. There were certain areas, certain neighborhoods where I lived where I wasn't liked at all and stuff, because I didn't play the game, because I didn't run with them and stuff like that, because I hung out with different people and stuff. So I caught it pretty bad like that. There was entire areas I couldn't even go to in my own neighborhood. So like I was one of those guys. So when I went to hang out, like in high school or whatnot, when I went to hang out, okay, I left my area and I had to go all the way down to, the bed or the other parts of the areas and hang out over there, because that's where I got my love. Would you believe that? That's where I got my love from. I got my love in the ghetto. The ghetto gave me love. And when I went home, that's when I had to watch my back. It's like when I got passed out of the border of the ghetto and I came back to the regular areas and stuff is where I had to watch my back. What white kids I had to watch out for and stuff. Funny that way, right? But listen, we were all kids anyway. But some of them were not. Some of the people were quite racist and stuff, and didn't give a shit. Other things that stood in my mind. I remember even on the white kids and their gangs and stuff, I remember them slapboxing a lot. And I had, and I was still learning stuff. And I remember they were slapboxing, they were, mastering the craft of fighting, relatively speaking and stuff, but still they were. And that always stuck on my mind and stuff like that. Were all the white kids from my neighborhoods and the border, I always lived on the borderline, so I didn't live deep in wealth and middle class. I always lived on the borderline, but still, were all of them jerks? No, not at all. Not at all. Some of them were really good. Some of them wanted to be part of that, but they actually came from projects. They actually came from Starrett City and stuff like that as well. They came from some bad stuff. Sometimes parents would divorce, so maybe the father lived in the good neighborhood, the mom lived in the bad, or vice versa, and things like that. Some of these kids, they really looked after me and stuff because I didn't have the backing of the entire neighborhood. The neighborhood was always divided when it came to me because I did things on my own terms, and I wouldn't accept just in general. That's just how it is and stuff. Some kids went to school, they went to bat for me and stuff, and I'll never forget them, and I know who they are. And other kids were schemers, lowlifes, and lowlifes. It didn't matter. They were lowlifes to their own kind. They were lowlifes to anyone and stuff. I don't know about that. Whatever, right? I don't know what that's all about, but it's unfortunate. So, what are some secrets that I learned? Some secrets. I learned that, like, in the beginning when I was learning to fight, when I was learning, the street stuff, there's this big deal to get punched. It's this big deal to get punched in this face. It's this magical, like, especially if you never did. It's this, like, and now I'm way cooler with it. I don't hold anyone else to that standard. Of course, you don't want to get punched in the face. And there are people who may go their entire life never getting punched in their face, and that's amazing, and that's awesome. That's awesome. But a revelation for me was when I snapped out of that idea that I was trying to avoid getting hit. And that's a huge deal. The way you conduct yourself when you're defending and you're fighting is if you're a new jack, a newbie, and you're green, behind the ears, wet behind the ears, and you're fighting as if you never want to get punched in the face, and you're fighting as if you never did. And there is actually a notable difference and stuff. And when I finally, crossed that threshold, when I gave that up, and I started, taking more chances, and then I actually, got punched in the face for different reasons and stuff, not always because I nobly had a one-on-one fight with someone. It just happens, and I started using them in my area is heavy gang oriented, and so not only drugs but also graffiti. So it was just massive cliques, massive gang oriented and stuff. So there were a lot of roll-ups, there were a lot of people getting jumped, and there were a lot of multiple kids versus one kid. Happened all the time and stuff. So you learn how to take a beating, man. You learn how to curl up and take a beating when you've just been caught out there, and and you can't run, and you're just caught. And that car rolls up or whatever, kids hop out, and you're done for. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So I started to have this revelation where I was like, you know what? I mean, for the average person, and I started analyzing, the average person is going to punch you in the face, but they're not going to break your nose. They're not going to devastate you, and they're not going to knock you out. It's not a golden rule. I mean, you never know who can. You can't underestimate anyone. But I did start thinking these type of things, and I started realizing that I can get punched in the face. It's not the end of the world. I can take a punch. I can get punched in the face. And when you understand this concept, right, that you can take a hit or that you could absorb a hit, even let's say in your skilled mode and stuff, that opens up some leverage for you. That opens up some positions for you and stuff. That allows you to play around with some of your moves and techniques as well. What are we talking about here? If you see a guy like in a pro sport, like a combat sport, right, and you see him really styling it and stuff, right? Like, what is he doing? Where does he get that? Where did he get that confidence? Where do you get that? And then you see the techniques where people are like, well, don't let him get comfortable. Don't let him find his rhythm. Don't let him get his timing. Don't let him get into that zone where he can style on you and school you and stuff. Well, where do these things happen? There's one way to think about it is like it's a comfort zone. It's a comfort level, but it's a comfort level that they achieve through experience, through being in those situations. So he knows that he can, start moving his hands around in this type of position, and it's a combination of experience and skill, and these are how you can start taking liberties and stuff. And so that's not only reserved for just the skill part and stuff and what you can do, but it's also reserved for what you can take. And like if you're afraid to get hit, for example, in a very simple sense, you're going to try to avoid wrestling, grappling, clashing, and coming together. So that's when you're going to see some of those untrained fights that break out into the street where both parties are at the very, very tip of the distance between each other. They're close, almost teetering on being close enough to hit each other, but they're right out of range, but they're not doing it skillfully. They're doing it because each party is afraid or doesn't want to get hit and or believes that the theory is to not get hit. And that is true. The theory is to not get hit. But at the same time, if you weren't afraid of getting hit, if you knew you can take a shot, if you knew what you were doing through the strikes, through the possibility of you getting hit, it opens up a whole nother dimension for you. It opens up a whole bunch of different angles for you. Okay, you can come in and stuff. And the same applies for like grappling. If you know how to grapple, if you have some grappling, if you have some wrestling skill, then you're not so afraid, and you're a lot more effective when you do come clashing together, when you do clash, or you can be the aggressor or take the initiate and lunge forward and close the distance on your opponent and stuff like that, because you have options. You're comfortable in a way. And I don't mean comfort as in a negativity or whatever. Comfort as in like you have the experience, you have the knowledge. And this is a very interesting concept. And you see this in pro people all the time and stuff. When the great boxers entered that ring, and sometimes I looked at them and I said, well, their skill level wasn't too far off from a lot of other really good fighters, okay? But what was the X factor? And then there's a bunch of X factors, obviously, but what were some versions of the X factor? It was a combination of them putting everything together, which was a very unique X factor. It was a combination of them getting in the ring and the confidence that they know how to do that. Because oftentimes you might look and you say, look how controlled they are. And which is the point where look at the speed that they're going, but the control that is sitting there. And even me when I was in younger years, and I would just be like more frenzy. And even just amateur fighting, people it's a frenzy, right? It's just an uncontrolled frenzy. And when you do have the opportunity, or you did land something, you might follow through with 4 or 5 other sloppy craps because, man, this is my chance. I'm going to knock him out. There's no control. There's no just... And that control comes from confidence and experience and stuff. So you see these guys, you see these greats that get in there, and they're so smooth and stuff like that because they know it's muscle memory, it's experience. They've been through it before. They know exactly what they should be doing and stuff. So anyway, hopefully we've had a good time chatting and talking about heaps of stuff. And I know I haven't gone over exactly all the specifics of the drills that we're doing over here, but you see the drills, and the really cool thing is we've done a lot of these drills before. So yeah, the 90s were there was still a lot of racism in the 90s. There was still a lot of racism in the 80s, man, and unfortunately there's still a lot of racism right now and stuff. But don't be fooled, man. Do not be fooled, because there are a tremendous amount of decent people out there as well. They really are. And if it gets to the point where like we can't trust ourselves that we can make that judgment, that we can tell, okay, then we're definitely defeated. Every drug made a comeback in the 90s. So it was a very intense place like that. And drug dealing and everything exploded. And you guys remember, and you should remember, crack, heroin made a comeback, angel dust, PCP, all the psychedelics made a comeback, And not only that, some newer legendary ones broke onto the site as well and stuff. So you wound up ecstasy and the speed. You know what I mean? Which is just another version of crack, right? Just all different processes and versions of cocaine. They all made a comeback. So it was a very intense place like that. So we had a lot of racism, okay? You had a lot of drugs and a lot of drug dealing. You had heaps of gangs, and gangs from the West Coast were finding their way to the East Coast over here for us as well. So that was happening as well. Another thing that the 90s happened in the 90s that people don't really mention a lot is big corporations and big businesses and those people who were doing their bullying and those people who were doing their gang orientation on that level, well, they were going strong. And while everyone was having an amazing time, because there certainly was a renaissance for music and art, it certainly was, you know, with grunge music and the common electronica coming in and techno music and rock ballads, strong, amazing stuff, concerts and stuff before it all came crashing down with Napster and all that stuff and everything. And then, you know, the what do you call it? So while everyone was having a really amazing time, you know, Woodstock, the new Woodstock and Lollapalooza and all that, right? While everyone was having a really great time doing all of that, big business was working really hard and putting their foot in. And by the time the dust settled, right? And by the time the specific dust settled from two towers that fell, okay, when that dust settled and everyone's eyes were reopened to a lot of shit, that was it. The government no longer existed as what we once knew it, and everything had changed. And you know, the 90s were cut off and done, and we had moved into the 2000s, and that was that. And big business was, you know, iced up all of their practices and techniques and moved forward. And so hopefully you had a really great time, and now we know each other just a little bit more, eh? Love you guys very much, fam.